Hey everyone. This guide will not explain all the mechanics of the raid. Only the relevant mechanics will be shown. As such, I have linked more in-depth guides in the description below. Without further ado, let's jump right in. The first thing to note is that it is extremely important to have super armor throughout the entire raid. Super armor can be acquired in two ways. The first is by using giant stone apples, which is what I'm doing. And the second is by running with a class that provides it, such as Deus Air. In this part of the raid, there are a number of basic attacks that can be completely ignored. There are only three important mechanics to remember. The first is the swamp mechanic. The boss will summon a swamp at a random location on the map which looks like this. The boss will heal if it touches the swamp, and the swamp will increase the rate at which the altars charge up if it touches one. To get rid of the swamp, a player will need to stand on it until it disappears. If a player stands on the swamp, their cooldowns will start counting up temporarily. The next mechanic is laser. The boss will connect lasers to an altar. These lasers will charge the altar if they connect. Players can block these lasers by standing in between the boss and the altar it connects to. The final mechanic is the altars. There is one altar in each corner of the map. These four icons correspond to the altar of the respective corner. Avoid letting the altars on the left berserk. That's all for this phase. For this part, it is important to hug the boss whenever it is possible. If someone stands too far away from the boss, it will jump as shown here. The boss's attacks will push you even through super armor, so be mindful of that. When the boss does this purple glow, she will do one of two mechanics. The first one is the web marker. A random player is given a marker that will turn into a web after 7 seconds. The web will slow down players and heal the boss so long as they are touching it. To avoid healing the boss, the player with the web should run to one side of the map when there are around 3 to 4 seconds of debuff remaining. The second mechanic is the target mechanic. The boss will give a random player another debuff that looks like this. An orb will be summoned on one side of the map. This orb functions the same way as Boo from Mario, with the marked player as the target. Upon getting hit by the orb, all players nearby take massive damage and will be silenced. The last mechanic is Abyssal Gate. It starts when this text appears. The boss will spawn 2 gates, and one of their conditions must be cleared within the time limit. To pass this mechanic, the healer will need to heal the blue gate to full HP. The healer should wait 15 seconds after the text appears before going to heal the blue altar. Once the mechanic is cleared, players have 5 seconds to exit the gate or they will die. If you fail this mechanic, the boss heals a lot of HP. Those are all of the important mechanics for 18.1. In this part of the raid, the boss starts with a shield that prevents it from taking any damage. To break the shield, destroy the crystals that spawn all over the map. Once the shield breaks, it will start regenerating naturally. Destroying crystals during this time will still lower the shield durability. Use this to your advantage if necessary. There is only one attack to watch out for in this phase. When this text appears, the boss will summon a target on a random player. This target will do massive damage to everyone in range if no allies are within the target before it explodes. For this reason, it is recommended for the party to stick together in this phase. In this phase, there are a few mechanics to be aware of. Every few seconds, these fruit will spawn around the map. Collecting these fruit gives you a 15-second buff that lets you deal meaningful damage to the boss. Always let the main DPS collect fruit first. Support should ignore them. The next mechanic is laser. Every party member will get lasers pointing towards one of the 4 corners. If your party is tanky enough, this mechanic can be ignored. Otherwise, move towards the corner that your laser points at to avoid hurting others. The next mechanic is target. When this text appears, the boss will summon a target on a random player. This target can be red or blue. If it is red, treat it the same as the Phase 1 target mechanic. If it is blue, then run away from the party. The final mechanic to watch out for in this phase is the charge attack. The boss will teleport to one side of the map and start charging up. Ignore this mechanic and wait on the other side of the map while the boss charges up. This will give your party a longer DPS window before the boss teleports again. It is important to note that this boss will enter hyper armor fairly often. Make sure to reapply your debuffs on the boss every time the hyper armor effect ends. That's all 18.2 has to offer. This is the part with the highest skill ceiling in the entire raid. The most important thing to remember in this phase is where to stand. Most parties will do best when everyone stands in the spot shown in the circle. This is due to how the boss's AI works. I'll spare you the details, but basically it forces the boss to just stand still rather than attack. You can see how the boss does not move in this clip even when it is not frozen. Here the boss moves when I walk away. With that out of the way, let's move on to the mechanics. The first thing to note is that every time you get hit, you gain a stack of distraction debuff. This debuff lowers the player's speed and can be removed by using consumable items. Upon reaching 20 stacks, this debuff will be replaced by another 15-second debuff. This new debuff will convert all damage dealt to the boss into healing. Every few seconds, the boss will teleport, alternating between the center of the map and the spot closest to a random player. The healer should freeze the boss when it teleports to the party for the first time. When the boss teleports to the middle, it will do one of two attacks. The first is Tornado. Avoid it by moving the same way I do. The second attack is this Claw Swipe. Avoid it by moving away from the attack indicator. The next attack to be aware of is Space Division. The boss will teleport away and slash multiple areas at random. Getting hit will give the player a blindness debuff. Next is Links. The boss will link the players in pairs like so. Players with circle must stay together, while squares must stay apart. It is important to note that mechanics will often overlap in this dungeon, so be ready to deal with multiple patterns at once. The first thing to note in this phase is that distraction still applies. All of the basic attacks can be ignored except for Black Hole, which you will likely not see before it reaches its HP threshold. The fog below will damage players who touch it. Upon reaching 150 HP bars, the boss will begin caging every player. The order in which you are caged can be seen in your debuff bar. To uncage others, hit their cage with any throwable consumable item. For this reason, everyone should bring wind orbs to this dungeon. The party should throw one orb every time two people are caged. If there are any cages remaining at the end of this mechanic, they will explode, killing everyone nearby. Once this mechanic is over, the boss will summon a shadow version of the Phase 1 boss below. Players will want to focus the shadow first before dealing with the main boss. The shadow has the exact same attacks as Phase 1. Once the shadow is dealt with, players will then need to focus the main boss. The main boss has two patterns that I'll be mentioning here. The first is Orb. The boss summons an orb on each side of the map. Avoid standing near an orb. The second pattern is Black Hole. When this indicator appears, move away from the boss. The boss will heal 5 bars for each player hit by this attack. This phase is relatively simple. It is important to hug the boss to prevent him from teleporting. The healer should freeze the boss whenever the DPS is ready to deal damage. The first important mechanic is Crystal. The boss will summon a crystal at a random location on the map. These are more of a nuisance than an actual threat, as they will periodically prevent nearby players from casting skills, and can be spawned on top of the party. Move away if necessary. The next mechanic is Black Hole. The boss will do this animation, and this debuff will be given to a random player. Treat this debuff the same way you would treat the web marker in 18.1. As of the time I'm recording this guide, this mechanic has a high chance to do absolutely nothing. This is a bug. The mechanic is supposed to spawn a black hole on the marked player that silences anyone who touches it. The only attack of note in this phase is the dash attack. Ren will dash in one direction while leaving abyssal flames on the ground. These flames will debuff any player who touches them, making all of their damage heal the boss for 5 seconds. It is expected for healers to cleanse this debuff. That's all for this phase. At the start of phase 2, players will be given a debuff. This happens every time this text appears. Be sure to watch out for this debuff. An indicator will show who has the debuff. When this debuff runs out, it will create a portal under where the player is standing. Get both players to place the portals at the same spot to not ruin the DPS's positioning. The first attack to watch out for is Abyssal Inferno. Ran will summon flames on the floor, which debuffs players the same way as Abyssal Flames in phase 1. This attack ignores iframes and applies both Abyssal Flame and Inferno debuffs. Abyssal Inferno does the same thing as Abyssal Flame, except it cannot be cleansed. Healers are still expected to cleanse the Abyssal Flame debuff from this attack. Next is Unstable Aura. This mechanic starts whenever this text appears. Ran will summon a mark at a random spot on the map. A player can pick up this mark to move it. The mark will explode after some time, dealing massive damage to any allies in range and heal the boss. It is expected for a support to do this mechanic. The mark will explode naturally if left alone for long enough, meaning it can be ignored as long as the mark spawns far away from the boss. It is crucial that only one person goes to do this mechanic, otherwise the boss can teleport to the player with the mark. The next mechanic is Box. Ran will create a large box that will debuff all players inside. This debuff lowers the action speed of the player and is not cleansable. This debuff can only be removed by reaching 5 stacks. The final mechanic of this phase is Crystal Pierce. Ran will summon 4 crystals, each one corresponding to one player. Each player will need to find their crystal and link it so that the line covers the middle of the map. This mechanic is successful if Ren dashes through all 4 links. The most important thing to know for this phase is the color mechanic. At the top of your screen you will see this icon that shows you your color. Pressing the special function key will change your color between red and blue. The boss will randomly start with a red or blue core. To be able to hit the boss, you want to be the opposite color from its core. In the most recent patch, the Toho attack was changed to do negligible damage and can be ignored. The first mechanic to watch out for is Meteor. When this text appears, the boss will summon a meteor at a random spot on the map. This mechanic is always followed up with the matching mechanic. Each player is given one of the 4 marks at random. The player must bring their mark to the corresponding spot within 15 seconds. Here's a chart of where all the marks go. The healer in charge of Meteor should complete their matching immediately. The rest of the party can complete it whenever. If this mechanic is not completed in time or a mark is brought to the wrong place, then it will explode, dealing massive damage to the entire party. The healer needs to freeze Meteor once they are done with matching. Like the boss, the Meteor will randomly be red or blue. You will need to be the opposite color in order to freeze or attack the Meteor. The Meteor can be permanently frozen in the air if done correctly. Once frozen, the Meteor will stay still for 15 seconds until it starts falling again. Alternate between freezing the Meteor and running over to the party to buff and debuff/heal. Note that there can and will be multiple meteors on the map at once. If a meteor hits the ground, it will explode, dealing massive damage and healing the boss. However, it is important to always keep at least one meteor on the map to avoid other annoying mechanics. The next mechanic is Absorb. The mechanic starts when this text appears. The boss will summon an orb on the other side of the map, and the orb will slowly approach the boss. To pick up the orb, the player must be the same color as it. The orb must be picked up 4 times before the mechanic is complete. Each time the orb is collected, it will spawn somewhere random and change to the opposite color. It always starts red. Ignore this mechanic until the orb is close to the boss, then collect as shown here. Doing this mechanic successfully will lower the boss's defenses permanently, while failing it will heal the boss and increase its defenses. Once the mechanic is over, the boss will move over to the other side of the map and change to the opposite color. Make sure you are always on the right color for what you need to do. Once the boss reaches 5 bars, it will enter its Berserk phase. The boss immediately drops another meteor when it enters Berserk. During Berserk, black holes will spawn randomly along the map. Be mindful of where you stand as these black holes will silence you. Berserk phase ends when the boss absorbs an orb. During this time, players are given the Last Hope buff, massively increasing their damage. Players can choose to DPS the boss during Berserk phase or wait until after. That's all the important mechanics. Thanks for watching and good luck out there.